We come now to the consideration of methods and phenomenological research. I want to take this in two parts. In the first part, I'm going to talk about specific methods and research work that's been done in sociology. And in the second part, I shall finish with some comments on literature. I said in the beginning that phenomenological research had led through one tradition to that of ethnomethodology, and that's clearly one distinct line. There's an important distinction to be made between descriptive phenomenology, such as that practiced by Husserl, and interpretive phenomenology, practiced both by Heidegger along that line and also by Schutz. And we can ask, well, what would a descriptive phenomenology look like? An example to actually go and look at is that of a doctoral thesis by Lynn Cindery at Sheffield Hallam, which was completed in 2011, I think. And in that, Lynn looked at the work of students on computer studies courses, and she was particularly interested in peer mentoring. And she did a phenomenological analysis. She used a Husserlian descriptive analysis, distinguishing between the noesis and the noema. She suspended her judgments as far as possible. And then in the final part of the thesis, she considers the implications for that and how she can use a descriptive phenomenology for studying the features of race, which she came to realize was a particularly important part of the study. Lynn's work is important because it shows how a descriptive phenomenology from Husserl's work can actually be used in research studies. To take the interpretive approach, which if you take it from Heidegger, another Sheffield Hallam doctoral study that is worth looking at is that of John Skinner, and John looked at the lives of people coming up for retirement and used the Heideggerian analysis to explore that. But the other side of an interpretive approach to phenomenological research is that, drawing from Schutz, is that partly of ethnomethodology, but also seeing how the categories that Schutz worked out in practice, such as reciprocity of perspectives, typification, use of common sense knowledge, how they actually operate in particular settings. And in the 70s and into the 80s, this was a common study for sociology of education and in classrooms. It has the advantage that it can provide contained studies which are particularly useful. The difficulty is that how do you actually link one study to another? Certainly some important and useful work has been done on that, particularly in the field of youth unemployment. But the descriptive studies took categories such as reciprocity of perspectives and saw what was happening. And I suppose the key difference between a descriptive and an interpretive study, a Husserlian study, would take the situation and would say to somebody, describe what's going on here. Whereas an interpretive study would ask questions and say, why did you do this? What was that about? How else might it have been done? And if it was pushed further, as an ethnomethodologist would ask awkward questions to try to get at the background assumptions. What are the implicit assumptions that are in place here? Things that are sedimented, that we take for granted, and only become aware of them when they are put into some kind of shock. The memory from long ago that is suddenly brought out into the open. The writings of the novelist W.G. Sebald are a wonderful example of how collective memory from the Holocaust, from Germany and the Holocaust, is submerged, forgotten, glossed over. What does it take to bring those memories back, and what do you do with them when you do? And that's one reason why I think literature is an important area to look at. So the phenomenological researcher in the Schutzian tradition will ask questions to say, what is going on here? How else could it have been done? What did you mean by such and such? Has anyone ever asked you about such and such? Or what do you think of when such and such happens? So even everyday activities can have their implicit assumptions, and the interpretive phenomenologist is interested in exploring exactly what those assumptions are. Now, of course, many of the excuse me, the assumptions and many of the judgments will be implicit and will be buried. And they will be things that we will not necessarily want to bring out into the open. Hence the importance of work on race, on disability, on gender relations. It is precisely those areas where hidden assumptions are important. It is important to bring them out. And that's where the researcher trying to see what kinds of stocks of knowledge are available, how they are used, using interview data to see how that has changed over time. So going back to the written records of the past to look at that is particularly important.